Okay, welcome back to the Worth Practice podcast. So let's hop into boundaries that don't require explaining. One of the hardest parts about setting boundaries isn't the boundary itself, it's the guilt that follows, especially when you've been conditioned to be accommodating, available, and understanding. Saying no can feel like you're doing something wrong, even when you're protecting yourself. Why boundaries trigger guilt? For many people, guilt around boundaries is learned. So it's a practice that you've picked up basically. And if you were praised for being easygoing, flexible, or selfless, you may have learned early on that being liked meant being available, meant always saying yes, meant always just going above and beyond and being hands-on with any and everyone's situation, even if it has nothing to do with you. And people pleasing often develops as a way to maintain connection or safety. Overgiving can be rewarded with approval, gratitude, or a sense of belonging. And over time, kindness can get confused with access. So people can think they have automatic access to you because you have opened up so much. But that's just you being kind and genuine. But opening up so much gives them access to think, okay, because you did this on this day at this time, and then again, maybe a couple hours later, you have a lot of time on your hands. You know, that's what they're thinking. And guilt isn't always intuition. Sometimes it's conditioning. Then you have explaining as a survival habit. And explaining can become a survival habit. Because you're like, if someone's asking you for something and you tell them no, it should just be no. But then you end up having to explain yourself. You explain yourself to stay safe. You explain to be understood. You explain to soften the impact of your decision so you won't offend anybody. And nobody should ever be offended by you not being able to do something that one time, or maybe that week you have something to do when you just can't be there. And that's where it leads to you might over justify your boundaries and hope that others will accept them. And you might explain to avoid conflict or discomfort. But over time, explaining can be a way of like just abandoning yourself. You're prioritizing someone else's comfort over your own clarity. And that's where you got to learn when to say no, when to stop. And me personally, I learned that you shouldn't have to explain yourself. If somebody respects you as a person and understands boundaries, and not many people work on boundaries, they don't understand it. That's something they need to look into. But me knowing it's okay to say no now. Before it was like, oh man, they probably think I'm being mean, and I'm not. And it shouldn't be like that. So reframe what boundaries actually are. And here's a reframe. Boundaries aren't a punishment. They're not acts of rejection or cruelty. Boundaries protect your energy, so that way you're not overwhelmed or stressed out or burnt out. They create clarity instead of confusion. Saying no is a complete sentence. Just be like, no. Some people want to add on to sound extra nicer. No, I can't. Or no, I got to do this, that. No, you could just say no. Because sometimes some things isn't everyone's business. Like if you have a doctor's appointment, if you got to pick someone up. Some people don't want other people in their business. So if you have to pick someone up, they probably don't want you telling people you're picking them up. So just telling somebody no is a complete sentence, even when it's uncomfortable. You're choosing peace over approval, which isn't selfish. It's self-respect. And then practical reflection. Let's think about this now. As we talked about this briefly and touched on it, and you might start to notice when you feel the urge to over-explain. You might practice setting one small boundary without offering a reason. So maybe try that today. Say no and don't go over it. Don't let them push you into why you need to, why you can't, why you said no. You might sit with the discomfort that follows just briefly without trying to fix it, because that's human nature. That's a habit that we built, and now we're trying to unlearn this habit. And you might remind yourself that you're allowed to choose yourself, even when others don't fully understand. You're not cruel for setting boundaries. Discomfort doesn't mean you're doing something wrong. And boundaries get easier with practice. And self-respect grows quietly. I know for me, I'm getting better with boundaries. Before I used to feel bad saying no all the time, but now it's just like no. Or even I could take a little longer replying to messages, because you don't have to always respond immediately to every message that comes in. You could take your time replying. So that's one thing that I personally learned. And you don't need permission to protect your time, energy, or peace. If this topic resonates with you, the guided journal that I created, it's on Amazon, is linked in the bio and explores boundaries without guilt. So you can write out like what your boundaries are and how to avoid that guilt.